this one guy comes in there and he like comments and he's like, "You clearly can't do math. I drive 50 miles a day back and forth from work. I fill up twice a month, all these things." Here's the question of the day. This is what I woke up this morning just with like a burning hole in my brain thinking about. Here it is. Who's the smartest dumb person you know? Think about it. I mean, at first it kind of sounds like a dumb question, an oxymoron. But then the more you really dive into it, there's a lot of really smart dumb people running a lot of stuff in this world who have a lot of power. So here's what I would define as a smart dumb person: is somebody who doesn't really know anything about basically anything except for like one thing. And they may or may not even know that they're good at that thing, but they do that thing so much that it raises the level of which everybody else thinks that they know about everything else. Does that make sense? I just said that in a really dumb way. See, I'm kind of dumb. They're good at one thing, therefore everybody thinks they're good at everything else. But in reality, they're pretty much dumb. Okay, who embodies this more than anyone else? Politicians, right? Like, tell me I'm wrong. They have way too much stuff to be involved with to be good at like even half of it. But they pretend to be. They pretend to be. And the reality is they usually have like one core competence. Okay? That's the average politician. And by the way, that core competence usually has nothing to do with actually like running or holding an office. It pretty much has to do with selling votes, getting votes. Why? Because that's what our system incents. The guy who gets the most votes gets to run the office, the country, the city, you name it. And so you have to be good at that before you're allowed to be good at anything else. Like, how many times have you seen people who run for office and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, that person, they'd be great. They're so good at this, whatever, you name it." And then, they start gaining a little bit of traction, and then they flame out way before they even make it to the final, 10 or whatever. So many people. Like, you remember they had the primary, the Democratic primary a couple of years ago, and there was like 12 people at the first debate. That was way too many. You couldn't hear anybody just talking over themselves. Impossible. And when you get in a situation like that, like, the average person cannot make a decision amongst 12 options. They just can't. So you have to narrow it down really fast. And that's what they did ultimately. But they narrowed it down based on who the heck was the best at selling themselves. That's the criteria. Smart, dumb people. Okay. There's not a single elected official who didn't have to sell themselves in some capacity. Like, do you really think that the populace knows what they're voting for? Did you really think that we actually can comprehend everything that we're actually voting on? It's like virtually impossible. It really is. Most people just pick the 2 or 3 issues that they have the most energy about, whether or not they even affect their lives, by the way. It's just what gets them the most riled up, and then they make a decision based on that. That's pretty much it. Prove me wrong. I want lower taxes. Well, okay. How about you start by quantifying the amount of tax dollars that you actually pay now and what that gets you? That might be a good way to start in order to make a decision based on actual information other than, I want lower taxes. I was looking at somebody's tax return the other day. There's a couple. I'm going off script. They had like $100,000, $110,000 of income. Pretty normal. Whatever. Total tax liability, federal income tax, $4,700. Is that a lot or a little? I don't know. Is $100,000 a lot or a little income? I don't know. But those were the numbers. I just kind of thought it was interesting. I went, lower taxes, higher taxes? It's an interesting place to start that discussion once you actually can frame it in context. So here's the other thing too about like smart dumb people is smart dumb people are really good at figuring out what the incentive system is of any sort of structure and then exploiting that incentive system. That's what they're good at. Forget everything else. I'm just going to do this thing. My mother went to Firestone Tire or whatever the other day to get an oil change. My mother's very good at exploiting the systems that are presented to her as a consumer. She gets a coupon in the mail, every week or every other week, or I don't know how often these things come out. And she'll literally clip it. When's the last time you clipped a coupon? And she'll go to the place every time she needs an oil change. And then she'll get this oil change for, I don't know what the discount is, 25%, 50%, who knows? Doesn't matter. And she's done this multiple times. It's not a big deal. Like, what does an oil change even cost? I actually have no idea. Tens of dollars. And last time she went there, I guess she had gone a few times. The manager was like, hey, we're not making any money on this. Like, can you buy something else? And she was like, no, you gave me this coupon. That's your fault for making the system. My incentive is to go and get the least expensive oil change that I can that meets whatever minimum standard that I deem necessary. You guys seem to be able to be competent at doing an oil change, and you seem to offer the lowest price. Therefore, I'm going to do it. I have no obligation to do anything else because you guys created the system. I don't think he really liked that. I'm not exactly sure she said it like that, but she just got the oil change and left. Maybe she won't go back there. Who knows? And I just think it's funny because the system that was created, yeah, sure, there were some intentions that they wanted other people to buy other things because they had this really low price on this one item. A lost leader. But you don't have to. And they have to realize that's a risk of setting up a system like that. We let people vote on stuff. They're going to vote for the people who attract them the most. Most of the time, people are voting for offices that A, they've never held, B, the person who are running never held. So how do they have context to even make this decision? Like, how many of the things that people are voting on, the issues, actually affect people in their average day-to-day life? I don't know. Also, the sheer size of the issues, the stuff that some of these elected officials have to deal with is so far beyond the comprehension of the average person. It's like almost unfair that we have to vote for them. Can I just say that? Look at New York City. So they passed a brand new budget for 2025. This just came out. Their mayor also got federally indicted, but that's a different thing. And this budget was for $112 billion with a B. $112 billion. That's what they're going to spend on the city to do whatever they need to do. Do you know how much money that is? That's like incomprehensible. $112 billion. That is 12 digits. I think I can count. It's a lot of money. There's only like 75 companies in the world that even make that much money. That's how much this city is going to spend on its municipality. Now, I get it. It's a big city and there's all these things that happen. But that is so much money that they're going to spend. And by the way, do you know what the New York City mayor's salary is? Let's see. I actually have to Google it. $258,000. That's the salary of the mayor of New York City, who's tasked with, among many other things, managing a city that has a $112 billion budget. Name me one company in the world that has $100 billion of revenue and pays their CEO $250,000. You can't find it. It's just not possible. So there's a bunch of things that are happening. There's a bunch of things that are wrong. We create a system that incents people to become salespeople in order to get votes. And then we dramatically underpay them for the level of executive competence that we expect them to have. That's the problem. We think that we're trying to get like the smartest, best, brightest people. And the average, really smart, highly competent executive mind would have to take such a big pay cut to take an elected office. It's such a joke. It's just hilarious to me. So you can really only get like two different people in office. And that's literally what we see every single time. There's two different types of people. You can get people who have been in the system their entire life, and it's the only thing they've ever known, so they're never going to change. And you know what? They're a public servant. Bless their heart. That's what they're going to do. And then you get other people who are so independently wealthy that the salary, the income they're going to make from this job is completely irrelevant to how they would do it, right? And you saw that. That's literally what we've had. You had Joe Biden, who's never had a job outside of public office, and Donald Trump, who donated his presidential salary. Kamala Harris, same thing. I don't know. I'm not saying one person's right or wrong. I'm just telling you, sometimes when you like peel back the onion, you start to realize, oh, there's incentive systems that are in place, and that's why we have the system that we have. That's why we have the people that we have. It's not anybody's fault. It's just what we have. The problem, like with all of this, is that people can only see the world through their own eyes. It's true. Like, we have this fundamental disability to see the world through any lens other than the seat that we sit in. And for most people, $250,000 is a lot of money. It is. It's a statistical fact. How many people make $250,000? Maybe 1%. It's just there's not that many people. So most people are looking at that going, oh, well, that's a good amount of money. They should be able to run this thing pretty well. Ask any other person who's managing $100 billion entity. I don't think they would tell you $250,000 is a lot of money. Maybe I have a bad perspective. Maybe I'm dumb. I don't know. But yeah, people can only see the world through their own lens. It's just reality. I crack up when I see people on X posting, life gets way easier once you hit X dollars of monthly income. I see that stuff all the time. It's on Instagram. It's on Twitter. You know, once you hit $10,000, I've seen that. Once you hit $20,000, I've seen that. Once you hit 50, once you hit 100. And I have no idea, like, if any of those are a lot or a little. I have some perspective, but I don't have an opinion, I guess, on whether those are a lot or a little. You can do a lot or a little with any of those. But I think, and maybe this is like the cynic in me, but every time I see one of those, I look at it and I go, that's exactly how much money that person makes, isn't it? Wow. Then I'll just go like read all their tweets and their posts and you name it. And then everything about that person's like online persona makes sense. They make $10,000 a month of income. Okay. I understand everything about them that I need to know now. They make $100,000. Usually when you get up to the higher end, let's say 100, 10 to 100 is the scale. On the higher end, usually when they're posting about that, they're saying, well, this is how much money I wish I could make every month. Or one time I had my best month and I made $100,000 that month. Therefore, life gets a lot easier when you make $100,000 every month. Yes, I would agree. Yes. I'm sure that you would like to do that every month and you had experience doing it once. Therefore, please tell me. Whatever. People have a basic inability to put themselves in other people's shoes. It's just true. I think the root of this, I saw this stat that something like 50 or 85% of the world like subscribes to this idea of like cause and effect thinking. And you'd be like, wait, what? Cause and effect? That is what everything is. This, then that, this, then that. And maybe that's true. 85% of the world probably thinks that's true. And like the definition of that would be seeing the world as it relates to you. If this happens, then that, without realizing that your experience in the world, I don't know, what does it account for? 0.000000001% of things that have ever happened or ever could happen. But therefore, because of the way that I have lived my life and what I have seen, that's the world through which I'm going to look at, the lens through which I'm going to look at this world. And that is my default operating system, which is just such a dumb, small brain thing to think. Okay, I don't usually do this, but I saw these comments on YouTube this week on some of these videos that I had. But this guy, like, I posted this video a week or two ago, and it was about, I was just doing the math on, does it make sense to own a car or not? And I said, the basic premise was, well, for most people, you should think about it because it's a lot closer than you might think. This one guy comes in there and he like comments and he's like, you clearly can't do math. That was how he started the video or the comment. You clearly can't do math. I drive 50 miles a day back and forth from work. I fill up twice a month and all these things. I like saw this and I audibly laughed because he thought my video was for him. Like I made a video about him, and he said that I couldn't do math about his situation. I forgot to make the video about him, and it cracked me up because it just reminded me of this point that the way that people operate is by looking at the world through literally their own experience, and that is it. That is it. I drive 50 miles a day, therefore you're stupid and can't do math. That's what he said. It was hilarious. But that's how we make decisions on things we don't know anything about. Like, everybody does this. It cracks me up. And then there are so many things that I see that are really good ideas on paper, and then they just end up being the most awful thing in the entire world when you get to the phase of, oh, let's actually implement this. Now, I'm not even going to talk about politics because basically all of it is that. But if I was to go look at like the average HR benefits guide, this one like cracks me up because I was looking at it again this past week, and I saw this company, pretty big company, Fortune 500, you probably know it. And they had this benefit in there for a retirement medical savings account. Okay. RMSA. The gist is you put some money in there. Your company will also put some money in there. It stays in this account, and you can use it to spend on medical expenses when you're retired. Okay. Here's the kicker. You can't really put that much money in there. It's like a very small percentage of your salary that can go in there. Your company will match a very small percentage also. And the benefits are not portable. So what does that mean? That means, I was talking to a client, that means this guy, who I know, worked for this company for like 10 or 20 years, you name it. Kind of didn't really know he had this account, but there was some money going in there. Stopped working there, I don't know, let's say 5 years ago. And we were just going through some things, logged into this account, and he found it. And there was $10,000 in there. Okay. $10,000 in a retirement medical savings account. And we called up the provider, big brokerage firm with a green logo. And we said, hey guys, I see this $10,000 account. Can we like move it to something else? Maybe another account that he already has that he knows about? And they're like, oh, no, you can't. We don't make the rules. We just administer the plan. And the plan says you worked there, you put money in, now you got to keep it there until you hit age 65, and then you can start spending it. But it's only on a reimbursement basis. You can't actually swipe a debit card and spend this, or write a check, or just transfer the money out. You have to spend money for a retirement medical expense and then show us a receipt, and then we'll reimburse you your money slowly until you spend it all down. And we hung up and we're like, okay, at least we know the rules of the game now. But I would love to know who, like in some HR corporate office somewhere, decided that, hey, this is a benefit for our employees, and this is a great thing that they need to have. Don't mind if, like, somebody works here for 20 years and then they forget about this account, and then they have to keep it here, and then 20 years later they can actually start to reimburse themselves from this one very small account they kind of forgot about. Odds are they won't even spend it all. Don't mind if like implementing it is a little bit problematic. This will definitely help us recruit people, and this will be a benefit that they can't get anywhere else, and it's so good they've got to do it. Like, this is what I feel like all of politics is like, but this is actually real life. You actually go and work for these giant corporations, and they'll give you these random ass benefits that nobody even knows they have, and people can't even like exercise them effectively. It's mind-boggling. It's insane. And we spend so much money on like administering these very small plans that people forget they even have. And somebody got a bonus because they said, oh, that's a really good idea. Employees are going to love that benefit. Somebody literally got a bonus because of that. And also some HR person who's never had a real job. They've just done HR. Sorry. Whoops. You can delete that. Just kidding. Okay, here's another one that people think is such a good idea in real life, and then you get to the implementation, it's like, who told you to do this? Vacation rentals. Oh my God. The literal worst idea of all time that everybody thinks is such a good thing. Like, I just can't. All that like owning a second property in general is just owning a small business with an unlimited amount of exposure, liability, expense, and a very limited amount of revenue. Like, there is only so much revenue you're ever going to be able to make from this thing. Especially a vacation rental, most of the time they're seasonal. So half the year, nobody really wants to stay there. And half the year, which is the good part, which is when you actually want to be there, you better get it rented like every single week or else. Single family rental, same thing. It's like you got 12 months of the year. You turn that thing over. If you miss 1 month, it's 9% of your revenue that you could have gotten to your ceiling of revenue that you could have gotten. Now it's out the door. It's a lot of risk. And if you don't make, 100% of your revenue that you need to be making, then you're not going to be hitting your numbers. And all of a sudden, it's not such a good deal. And by the way, did you spend any time on that place? Was your time worth anything? No, my time is free. Okay, great. Tell that to the next guy you want to pay to do that job because you're tired of it. When you own a single family rental or a vacation home or any of these places, until you get to the point of, well, even at scale, here's the thing. It's like owning a job. It is owning a job. When it gets to the point of scale, definition of scale, revenue goes up faster than expenses. When it gets to the point of scale, it starts to become a little bit more efficient. But owning 1 or 2 or 3, it's like owning a job with a ceiling on revenue and unlimited amount of expenses. It's just the worst deal ever. And people think they can go buy these vacation rentals and it's going to be a breeze and it's going to be paid for by somebody else. They can go there whenever they want. And then when you actually literally run the numbers, if you wanted to go buy a week at the nicest Airbnb in town twice a year, almost every time, that's going to be a better deal, especially if your time's worth anything. Oh, I made $10,000 this year on my Airbnb, $20,000, $50,000. I don't care. $50,000. Then I had to pay this and this thing broke and I made a little bit of profit, made $20,000 in profit, but I had to spend so many hours on it. Like, couldn't you have just sold another product at work? Wouldn't that have been easier? Oh, well, it's going up in value. It might. It also might not. That's what we've seen in Austin. I don't know. Whoops. Sorry. Everybody's going to get pissed at me. Oh, well. The smartest dumb people you know. Yeah, so there's a lot of ideas that sound good. I just don't know. I will say that being really enthusiastic about one thing and just taking that thing to like way beyond its logical end actually usually works out pretty good for some people. Like, I got to give it to the politicians. Like, you can't expect them to be normal. Are you kidding me? Or even any of these CEOs that are running, $100 billion companies. Do you expect them to be normal? Do you expect them to act like everybody else? Of course not. They shouldn't. So I think that there's a lot of value in just figuring out one thing and just exploiting the hell out of it. Just taking whatever incentive system exists and just absolutely maxing it out. Like, I wish I could go to every single Firestone tire place in the world and get like free oil changes because, like, screw them. That would be, I wish I could resell them, make a profit because it's their fault. They created the system. But I do think that, like, most people who are in the public eye kind of held out as intellectual or thinkers or politicians, you name it. All they did was get really good at one thing and exploit that. They got really good at gaining attention, getting votes, you name it, and just exploited that one thing. And a lot of times you could have put these people in really any other field and figured out one thing to exploit, and they would have figured it out. I mean, that's just the type of personality it takes to be able to do that. So I don't know what got me onto this morning. It's just what I felt like. Okay. Yeah. We'll see what comes up next time, but leave a comment or not, or get mad at me. I don't really care. But we'll see you next time. And that's all.